Today, we're diving into one of the most epic battles of the medieval era, the Battle of Hattin, which went down in July 1187 CE, in what we now call Israel. Picture this: Saladin, the legendary Sultan of Egypt and Syria, was on a mission. His target, the Crusader armies holding Jerusalem and its surrounding lands. But first, let's set the scene. The Crusader states, like the Kingdom of Jerusalem, had been carved out after the First Crusade. These Christian enclaves in the Middle East were like islands in a sea of hostile territories. Despite their fancy castles and bustling trade, manpower was always an issue. The failed Second Crusade didn't help matters, and by the late 1100s, they were feeling the heat from powerful Muslim rulers like Nur-ad-Din and, of course, Saladin. Now, Saladin wasn't messing around. He'd been steadily gobbling up territories left and right, tightening his grip on the region. And while the Crusaders sent out desperate pleas for help to Europe, kings like Philip II of France and Henry II of England were too busy with their own affairs to lend a hand. Then, on May 1, 1187 CE, Saladin dealt a brutal blow to the Crusaders at the Springs of Cresson. It was a wake-up call. Those heavy, clunky knights weren't invincible after all. And Saladin, with his seasoned army, had quite the lineup. Picture this: his elite Mamluk bodyguards, trained since they were mere boys, were at the forefront. Alongside them were mercenaries, skilled mounted archers, troops from Ayyubid lands, and even eager volunteers seeking glory in the name of religion. For months, they gathered south of Damascus under the watchful eye of Saladin's eldest son, Al-Afdal. When the time came, Saladin could muster around 12,000 mercenaries and 6,000 to 12,000 conscripted soldiers, with a hefty 12,000 cavalry among them. They were organized into 3 divisions, with Saladin himself leading the charge from the center. Now, on the other side of the battlefield stood the forces of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, led by none other than King Guy of Lusignan. Their numbers were impressive, with well over 16,000 men at arms. Among them were the famed Franks, as the Crusaders were known to their foes. With some 15,000 to 18,000 infantry and around 1,300 mounted knights, they were a force to be reckoned with. But here's the catch: despite their might, the Crusaders were outnumbered, and their cities and castles had been left vulnerable, their garrisons pulled away to bolster their field army. It was a risky move, a gamble with the fate of the Latin East hanging in the balance. And on July 3, 1187 CE, Saladin made his move. The Frankish army, marching from their base at Safari toward the besieged city of Tiberias, found themselves ambushed by Saladin's forces. The Franks, desperate to relieve the siege, and perhaps spurred on by the plight of Raymond of Tripoli's wife trapped in Tiberias, had to navigate through the waterless hills of Galilee. Saladin's plan: relentlessly harass the enemy with mounted archers and keep them on their toes. As the scorching sun beat down on the battlefield, Saladin's tactics paid off. The Franks, stretched thin and parched from the lack of water, struggled to hold their ground. When they attempted to push on toward Lake Tiberias, Saladin's men set fires to the surrounding bush, further adding to their discomfort. And when the heat reached its peak, Saladin's archers unleashed a devastating barrage, throwing the Frankish infantry into disarray. In the chaos that ensued, some managed to break through and escape, while others, like Raymond of Tripoli, fought their way out against all odds. But for many, there was no escape. The remaining Franks made their last stand on the slopes of Mount Hattin, hoping for a miracle. But it was too late. Despite their valor, the Franks were overwhelmed. Saladin's forces closed in, using a clever tactic of targeting the knights' horses to immobilize them. Guy of Lusignan, the king of Jerusalem, was captured but treated with respect. Renaud of Châtillon, however, faced a brutal fate for his earlier transgressions. As for the captured nobles, some were ransomed, while others were sold into slavery. Saladin, basking in his triumph, also seized the True Cross, a cherished relic, from Guy's tent. It was a devastating blow to the Franks and a significant victory for Saladin. Now, Saladin wasn't about to rest on his laurels after his stunning victory. Oh no, he had big plans. Taking full advantage of his momentum, he swiftly seized control of key cities like Acre, Tiberias, Caesarea, Nazareth, Jaffa, and drumroll please, Jerusalem itself. Yep, you heard that right. Jerusalem, the Holy of Holies, fell into Saladin's hands on October 2, 1187 CE. But here's the twist: Saladin wasn't just out for blood. Sure, he accepted ransoms from those rich enough to buy their freedom, but the rest? Well, let's just say there was a sudden spike in the Middle East slave market. Eastern Christians, though, got a bit of a break. Saladin allowed them to stay in Jerusalem as a protected minority, a gesture of tolerance amidst the chaos. With Jerusalem under his control and the Latin East in shambles, it looked like game over for the Crusaders. But hold on, folks, because the West wasn't about to go down without a fight. No, they rallied their forces and organized what would become known as the Third Crusade, one of the biggest crusades yet. Leading the charge were not one, not two, but three European monarchs: Frederick Barbarossa, the Holy Roman Emperor, Philip II of France, and Richard I, famously known as the Lion-Hearted of England. These guys meant business. Now, despite a few victories here and there, like the recapture of Acre, the West couldn't quite pull off the ultimate prize, Jerusalem. Saladin's Ayyubid dynasty continued to hold sway in Egypt and Syria, firmly entrenched until the mid-13th century. And so, the saga of the Crusades raged on, with Jerusalem remaining tantalizingly out of reach for the Western powers.